Hi, everybody. First, I want to say thank you so much for being here this morning. What we're doing here is very last minute, and we create this event and a possibility for people to hear from our friends what happened on October 7th, and I think it's the best way to realize and get more information other than to just read in the news or see an article. So we're really advocating for this. My name is Mika Josting. I live just 5 minutes from here. I'm personal friends of all the four that are present. They are from Israel. We have Dvir and Maya that are from Kibbutz Fara. They're part of the Otef Kibbutzim that were affected on October 7th and were personally there. And we have Gili and Maya Roman, both from Tel Aviv. They're the family of Carmel Gat and Yarden Gat. Yarden returned from captivity, luckily, but Carmel is still captive. And we're going to have a conversation with them now. So if you have questions, maybe write it someplace and we'll get to it in the end. So Dvir and Maya, thank you for being here. And thank you for advocating the last 2 months in America and then going around and sharing your story in the most personal way, meeting different Jewish and non-Jewish communities. We would love to hear what happened on October 7th to you and your family. Share with us.
So first, good morning. Thank you for coming. Thank you for having us. Like Mika said, we are from Kibbutz Fara, which is in the north part of the Gaza envelope.
It's 3 kilometers from Gaza.
Yeah. I've born there in Gaza. I come from a family we were 6 brothers and sisters. My parents arrived to the kibbutz in their 20s, got married, and fell in love in the place and each other, and stayed in the kibbutz. At that Saturday, we were four of us with their families. The married one in the kibbutz, and 2 of my other sister and a brother lived in Tel Aviv. They still do.
Just to say what a kibbutz is a very close-knit community. Kfar for about 900 people. If you want to imagine a picture of what it's like to live in a kibbutz, it's like a resort where everybody's like living one next to the other and walking. The doors are open. Everybody's raising their kids together.
They work a lot harder than people in a resort.
Well, no, just like that. Of course. Of course.
It's really, it depends.
We do have a pool. We have a pool.
And a dining room.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah. We just came back from South Africa from our first family trip. Our son is here in the States with us. Now he's 14 months. He was 11 months. We woke up in the morning early. I was on my way out to go for a stroll with our son to let Maya sleep a bit more because she was awake most of the night.
You all heard that he said he woke up early, right?
Yeah, I was still up early, I got a kick, but it was early. Anyway, I was on my way out, and Maya thought it's much earlier and told me that Ziv, our son, needs to sleep a bit more, so to keep him put him back in the bed, which basically saved us because both of us were ready for a walk outside, like every Saturday. And 10 minutes later, the rockets started to fall constantly, hundreds of them.
We didn't know at the time, but it wasn't only rockets falling, but the terrorists arrived to our kibbutz like pretty much immediately. So
How did you realize this is different than regular shooting of missiles?
I think that straight away we realized that because of the amount of the rockets, straight we realized that it's something different, but we didn't know anything at the point because we were kind of used to the escalations. We called it escalations because once in a while, twice a year, one of the terror organizations in Gaza decided to shoot rockets into Israel. that was our drill. Like, you get into the safe room, starting to pack your things, calling to friends, family, whatever.
Go on the first vacation somewhere and come back when everything is
It was
gone
kind of
down.
a forced vacation once or twice, 3 times a year, for a few days, up to a week or two, and then we used to just come back to the kibbutz, and the next day wake up, go to work, and just like nothing happened. So this is how it started. I went out to bring the dogs, and Maya took Ziv and went to the safe room. I called the dog.
Safe room is a room inside of the house.
Yeah,
Only one room of the.
Safe room in Israel, it's not like a panic room or underground shelter like here. Basically, just like another room in the house, just made out of concrete, thick walls, thick ceiling.
The best way to picture it, I think, like just imagine it's our baby's room. Okay, so it's a baby's room, our firstborn child, with all the love that you put into it. You have a crib there. You have a chair that you can breastfeed or give him a bottle. You have place for toys, but that's the room. Like
just a special window and special door, basically. When I'm saying special, it's not like a underground shelter.
And you don't have any supplies there or any power banks, not like
water, food. It's like just a regular room. So one of the dog was on a leash. I brought her in. I went out to call to the other dog because he ran away because of the explosions. After 10 minutes, I realized that the rockets are still falling around me, all over the kibbutz. So I went back and left the front door open. And 2 weeks later, we understood from one of our neighbors that he saw me outside calling the dog, and then he ran inside to his safe room. And when he came to close his metal window, he saw 5 terrorists standing in our garden, just where I was. We want to believe that because I left the front door open, they thought that someone was in our house already and skipped our house and continued to the neighbors. We started to get all kinds of crazy messages from people.
I think at the beginning, we have like a women WhatsApp group, some friends of mine. So all of a sudden they started to write, "What's going on? I hear Arabic outside my window and I hear gunshots outside my window." Now, like Dvir said, we were used to the rockets, not in that amount, but the rockets wasn't anything new. But to hear Arabic and to hear gunshots in the kibbutz, it's something that no one ever imagined that can even happen, because we had the obstacle, we had all these clever defense mechanisms. We started hearing Arabic outside our window and gunshots outside our window, and Dvir will tell the story, but I think pretty fast, our safe room, again, our baby's room, like the safest place you want to believe on earth, became the most dangerous place on earth. Our house, I don't know if any of you have been to Israel or to the kibbutzim, but if you have been, like in Kfar, the place that got hit the most is where the young adult live. Our house is right on the way there. So our house was it just went on like it was a continuous battlefield. It didn't stop until they rescued us from there about 24 hours later. We kept on hearing screams outside our window. Things kept exploding on our wall. Gunshots were fired at our window. We heard the bullets hitting the window and jumping off the window.
You also didn't have electricity? They went off?
The electricity went off 10-15 minutes after everything started. So basically we were in this sealed room because it designs for rockets, and when it's supposedly when chemical rockets falling outside, so it won't get inside. So basically we were stuck in this room with no electricity, no aircon, sealed, so it was also with no air came inside.
It was a very hot day.
And with no water, no food, with our...
No light, we were in dark. Only we had this MIPI light of our baby, so this was what...
Yeah.
Sometimes it was red, sometimes it was blue.
Yeah.
This is what we had.
This
is what... And we kept on smelling this burnt smell because they were burning the houses down. So, I'm sorry for doing this to you, but if you want to picture the situation, this was the situation the whole time.
What was happening on the WhatsApp groups? What do you were in the room by yourself with your baby, holding him.
So
What do you understand that is happening around
we
you?
got those like hundreds of messages on all the WhatsApp groups of the kibbutz. People started to write they're in my house, we need help, they shot my mother, my wife, she's dying in front of the kids, they killed my parents, my brother is lying underneath them, they're burning us alive, they put the house on fire. My friends from the first response team, there are civilians from the kibbutz that jumped to protect us and help. Their wife started to send messages of my husband got shot, he's bleeding to death, someone needs to go and help him. And everything, it's like 50 to 100 meters away from us, and you're stuck in your safe room, and you can't leave, you can't go and help anyone because you're basically, first you're blind because you don't know what's going on outside, and second, once we heard the Arabic, we realized that the explosions basically are not just rockets. They're inside the kibbutz, RPGs, hand grenades, Kalashnikov, AK-47 shooting all around. So people are just dying 3 houses from you, like 50 meters from you, and you can't go out to help. And it was non-stop, even in my family. And at that point, we realized that I locked the safe room window, which a lot of people didn't know how to do, because I work in construction, so I do it. I knew it, how to do it. So a lot of people died because they didn't know how to lock the safe room window, or they didn't know that the safe room door can't be locked from the inside. So basically, they just came from the outside, opened the safe room doors or windows, threw grenades inside, or just shot all over. A lot of people died in their safe rooms.
We have like 3 friends, a couple that lives 3 houses from us. Their daughter is with the same daycare of our son. She's a 1.5 years old. They were in the safe room, and at one point came some people. They weren't even armed terrorists. Like, they were the group that came later. They just opened their safe room door. They saw them there with the baby. I'm going to tell it real fast because we don't have enough time, but seeing them like a couple and a baby, they started to fight them, and then they fought them back. So they started to use whatever, like I don't know how to call them, terrorists, civilians, I don't know how, like, they weren't armed. So they just started to use whatever, like, I don't know, things they had there to attack our friends. And then they started burning their house while, again, they know exactly who's there. They tried to escape, but they threw a gas tank inside the house and it exploded. They got burnt. And then they went to the shower to put water on themselves. So from the shower window, they started to attack them with wooden sticks, and they hit the woman, like they broke her jaw while she's holding the baby. She was hitting them back. Then they throw another gas tank into their safe room. Again, when they're seeing they're a couple with a baby. And these are not Nukhba, these are not Hamas, like official terrorists. And then the balloon exploded again. This was like 1.5 hours of fighting. They threw beer bottles on them, whatever they just could from outside. At one point, they just left. And luckily, this couple and their baby managed to escape. They were severely burned. They had like 70% burns on their body, and they got saved. They were in critical condition for a long time. And luckily, like in the past few weeks, they got out of danger and they're safe. But this is what happened.
Yeah, and on the safe group, on the family WhatsApp group, we straight away started to chat, and everyone answered. But after like 1 hour or 2, we realized that one of my sisters is not responding.
Just to say, you're 6 siblings, and 4 of them.
4 of them, including me, lived in the kibbutz at that time, and plus my parents, like 5 houses, and my uncle. My mother's brother with his wife and 3 sons out of 4 kids also lived in the kibbutz.
Dvir's grandpa is also a Holocaust survivor. He lost all his family in the Holocaust. He has 2 kids, Dvir's mom and Dvir's uncle, and he had 10 grandkids, and on that Saturday he lost 2 grandkids.
Yeah, he's 98, still sharp and healthy, but broken from the inside. Anyway, we'll do it quickly. Trying to press 30 hours into 15 minutes. We realized that one of my sisters is not responding. While I'm holding the door for, like I did in 20 hours straight, and while Maya holding Ziv, our son, for 20 hours straight, our mission was very simple: keep the door closed and keep the baby quiet. And if we're talking about Holocaust, it was quite a few times that her way to keeping quiet was just to put her hand on his mouth, leave the nose open so he can breathe, and just make him be quiet. While we were doing it, we sent messages and locations to basically everyone we knew, from the army, the police, Shabak, the Secret Service, everyone we just knew, so people will come to rescue us, our friends, our family. In some point, we got this message from my sister's neighbor, which is one of the only two guys that, out of 12 from the first response team, that were still on his feet. They told us that once he realized that there are hundreds of terrorists and all of his squad is dead except the guy that was with him, they went back to his house, because those guys just left their wives and kids in the safe rooms and went out to fight. One of them, even while he was fighting and got injured severely, the terrorist kidnapped his wife and 3 kids into Gaza.
I just want to say one thing, because I just saw an article on the news this morning that Hamas declared that October 7 was a part of their fighting against the IDF, and whatever civilians that were killed, it was just like a mistake on the way. Just so you know, we didn't have army in our kibbutz until 10 in the morning. There was continuous shooting and fighting. Our kibbutz, as Mika said at the beginning, was a community of about 900 people. That day, the elderly were outside in a trip overseas, and it was also a holiday, so not everyone were in the kibbutz. There were probably around 600 or 700 people in the kibbutz. They found 250 dead bodies of terrorists only in our kibbutz, and this is only the bodies, right? These are not people who kidnapped people. As we know, it took a lot of people to kidnap a person, so like 7 or 8 people for each one they took, and also some of them went in and moved on to other places. So I just want to give you all the right facts of how many terrorists went into the kibbutz while there were no army forces or no any forces inside, only civilians. So it's very important for us, for everyone, to know the facts.
So he texted us, my sister's neighbor, that he went back home, and they live right next to each other, and he saw their door, that the front door is open. He saw an empty AK-47 magazine on the stairs, and he hears that they're twins. They had 2 baby twins,
10 months old.
10 months old. He heard them crying. He tried to get into the house, but every time he did, the terrorists shot at him, so we couldn't get inside. So again, we texted everyone we just knew, because, you know, at least now we know that the babies are fine, they're crying. We didn't know what's going on with my sister and her husband. Somewhere around the afternoon noon, we got a phone call from Maya's friends from the Shabak, the Secret Service, and they told us this is after 12 hours we're already in the safe room. He said, guys, it's too complicated. There are too many terrorists in your kibbutz. We're doing our best, but prepare yourself to stay overnight. And we're like, what are we talking about? We have no electricity, no water, no food, no nothing.
And we're with a baby in a combat zone.
Yeah,
like
it's like still shooting, still throwing grenades all over. It's like, we'll try our best, but prepare yourself to spend the night there.
The whole time we were getting these crazy messages, like they send us a message, be prepared, the Air Force is gonna bomb the kibbutz. And we were like, what are we supposed to do? Do they know that we're here? Do they know that we're alive?
It was another message also that we know that they put your houses on fire in order to make you go out and to catch you. So
if they burn your house, stay inside. It's better to
it's
get
better
some
to get some
burns than
burns.
to. And I remember like looking at each other and we're like, what are we supposed to do? No one ever prepared you to this. And again, you're with a baby. You don't know what you're supposed to do. And we kept on because everything was burning. So we smelled this burn smell the whole time. And you're basically blind. You don't see. You just hear and smell. So I just remember we kept on touching the floor and the walls to find out, is it our house that's burning? Like, if it's my house that's burning, I want to know. I want to escape. So this was like the whole time we didn't know what we're supposed to do with ourselves.
Around the evening, something around 8:30 in the evening, we got again a phone call from the same guy, Miles' friend, and he told us that that the twins are safe and they've been rescued and they're on the way to the hospital. And we asked about Adar and Itai, my sister and her husband, and his answer was they are not on the abducted list. And because of this crazy denial mechanism we have in our heads, you know, when you're in this trauma situation, we didn't even we were happy. We didn't even think what he's not telling us. And less than half an hour later, my brother rang me. My brother that lives in Tel Aviv. Once he realized that he can't help physically, he opened some kind of operation room in his living room, and he's connected between all the messages from the WhatsApp groups and the locations on the WhatsApp groups of the civilians, the people in the kibbutz, and the armed forces that was in our kibbutz, because like Mika said, it's like a kind of a resort. We don't have like street names and house numbers, so if you don't know where to go, there's no way you'll find the house. So he told us that it's confirmed and Adar and Itai are dead. And I remember we had this a minute or two that we kind of cried, broke for a minute or two, but then we looked at each other and it's like, okay, now we don't have one baby to take care of, we have three.
Yeah, at that moment we already lost contact with Dvir's other sisters as well, so we didn't know, we thought we were going to get much worse news than we got,
each one
which
of
is
them
funny
with
to say.
3 kids. And
How did you get out of the kibbutz? Like, you have all of the messages, you hear things are happening to your friends, you hear all of the noise around you. After 24 hours and getting the worst news possible.
So after we got this message and we straight away, we didn't have the privilege of, you know, to freeze. Straight away we started to find where in which hospital they are, because it was like one big chaos over there. And Maya straight away started to make lists of what my brother and my sister needs to bring with them to the hospital to take them.
Because your babies grew up together.
Yeah,
they're the same age.
We have like 5 babies that born in 10 months in the family. And then
there's a month apart, the twins and our baby.
And then it's important to say that when my brother told me that it's confirmed that they are dead, we told them not to say anything to our parents, because at that point they lost contact with 3 of their daughters. We knew that we were going to be next because we had like 10-15% battery, and they were in their safe room, and we want them to keep fighting and not to give up and not to lose them as well. In some point, the battery finished. It was hot. It was so hot. There was no air. I don't really know. I don't know how to say if we fell asleep or passed out. But around 5:30 in the morning, we opened our eyes and we saw, like, all 3 of us were on the floor, and we just opened our eyes with guns in our faces.
Because you passed out.
Look, we didn't sleep for 3 nights in a row because with the flight from South Africa and, you know, everything, and during the whole these 24 hours, and we were so depressed and sad. So I really don't know to say. I remember I saw the hour 3:30 in my watch, but
we
the
felt
next
like
thing
we've been occupied. Like things got at one point when the phones went out and the fighting kept on happening outside, and you know we heard this tank every now and then, And then it was quiet, so we said, okay, now it's a tank, so that's it. The IDF is here, we're safe. But then you hear the terrorists again and again and again and again and again. We got like the feeling that the IDF isn't taking control over the things, and things got pretty depressing, I think.
We heard the Hebrew straight away, so we understood that they were soldiers, and they gave us 2 minutes. We thought that they're taking us out, but apparently they didn't have enough armed vehicles. So basically, they told us that we have 2 minutes to pack. Everything again is under fire. Shooting again, the grenades, the rockets, everything is still falling around. And then they took us to a different house, which took us, instead of 3 minutes walk, almost 20 minutes walk, because they pushed us to the ground every few steps while I'm holding my son and she's holding the one of the dogs.
We were just walking like really close to the house behind us while they continued to fire at us, so we had to get down every few steps.
And there we stayed for another almost 5 hours in 2-bedroom apartment with another 16 people. We were 19 people in total for another 5 hours. And only then at 10:30 in the morning, they came in with armed vehicles and took us out of the kibbutz.
At some point, the terrorists noticed that they took civilians to that house, to that safe house, so they started attacking the house that they hid us in. So the army went out to fight the terrorists again. Luckily, the army won, the IDF won, so they managed to take us out.
And only when we got out, we realized that the terrorists killed my sister and her husband very early in the morning. They found my sister in her pajamas on the kitchen's floor with the bottles in her hands. She went out to fix the bottles because also she didn't think that something like this is going to happen, and she knew that she's going to be stuck in the safe room for an hour or two. Then
they shot her through the window. They saw her through the window, and if you would have seen Hadar, it was obvious she's no threat. She's this delicate, very skinny woman, so they just shot her through the window.
And then came in, shot her again to verify. Itai closed the door behind him, the safe room door with the twins, after probably he saw and heard what happened to his wife. They shot him through the door, 3 bullets. They had 2 cribs, one in front of the safe room door and one on the side. Luckily, he was smart enough to put both of the twins in the side one, because 2 bullets hit his body and the third one hit the crib that was in front of the door. They got inside, shot it, verified also next to the twins in this 9 square meters room. And they basically just left the twins with their diapers crying for almost 14 hours as bait. Didn't give them any water or food or anything, didn't pick them up. So people will hear them crying and will come to rescue them. And they just basically waited on the rooftops outside of my sister's apartment and inside with the twins and the 2 bodies, and shot everyone who just tried to come and rescue the twins, including the army.
It was not like, it wasn't any humanitarian act that they left the twins. Like, people ask us how come they left the twins alive. It's only because it served their purpose. They were a trap. They didn't touch them. They didn't give them water. They didn't give them food. They didn't pick them up. Like, for me, I can't hear a baby crying for more than 2 minutes without doing something, right? 14 hours, they just left these babies to cry. They were completely dehydrated. When the IDF found them, they didn't have any clothes on. Their diapers were wet. They were soaked.
I want to ask you a last question about your life since October 7th. What is happening with you, the community?
Okay, so first, it's important to say our community has lost that day 63 members. 18 got kidnapped. And it's important that we say kidnapped, because these are not soldiers that were taken in battle. These are people that were kidnapped from their beds in their pajamas in Saturday morning. 11 of them luckily came back. 2 were killed while being in captivity, mistakenly by the IDF, which is also, I think, a part of whatever Hamas is doing, like leaving them in a place that is, never mind.
Crossfire.
Yeah. 5, we still have 5 people, 5 of our community that are still there, along with 131 others and Carmel, of course. The names of the people from our community that are still there are Keith Segal, who is 66. He's an American citizen from North Carolina. He's a father, he's a grandfather. We have Emily Damari, 27, and Doron Steinbrecher, 30 years old, two beautiful young women. They were supposed to be on the last deal with Hamas. In the last minute, Hamas blew up the deal and it didn't went through. We can only imagine why, because we hear stories from people coming back and we are very worried. Why won't they release these young women? I don't want to say anything more about that. And two young twins, 26 years old, Zivi and Gali. Their mother is going crazy from worrying to them, having two kids in Gaza. You need to understand there's no Red Cross visits for these people. We can't even verify. Like I've heard that now they're trying to transfer medicine for them through Qatar, whatever. We didn't even get a verification that the medicine went through. We know Doron has epilepsy. She needs medicine. These people are mistreated. They don't have any basic conditions. They don't get enough food. We hear all the stories from people coming from there. They don't get sunlight. They don't get, some of them are wounded. Some of them are missing limbs. We know about horrible things that are happening to the women there. So I think our main goal of coming to speak to you and whatever we're trying to do here, we've also been to Congress, is to say that these people these are civilians, they need to come back now. We need to have a deal, we need to bring them back. There's no price that's too high. Again, I'm sorry for giving you secondary trauma, but imagine if it was you or any one of your loved ones. Would there have been a price that would be too much? I don't think so. I think we just need to bring them back now, not tomorrow, not in a week. Now, they're there for over 100 days. I can't believe we arrived to this number. It's too much. It's crazy that the world is not saying, bring these people back home. And that is it.
We are, as a community, just briefly we're basically dislocated from our homes. Our kibbutz is not a place that we can go back to. So as a community, we are now in hotel in Kibbutz Shfaim, in the center of Israel. This solution gonna be at least till August. Then we're gonna either stay or move. No one knows. No one tells us anything because I think that they don't know yet.
It's going to take them 2 to 5 years to rebuild the kibbutz.
And for another 2 years. And so basically we'll be able to go back to the kibbutz only, they're saying 2 to 3 years, but...
Who knows what happens in 2 or 3 years in people's life.
And you need to, when we left Israel, I don't know how many are displaced now, but when we left Israel...
Hundreds of thousands.
200,000 people were displaced in the north and in the south. Both places, I don't know if you've got the news from the north, but a lot of the houses, a lot of the places are ruined beyond the option to come back.
Thank you so much for your testimony and sharing your story with us today. I know it's not easy to say what happened, and you're so brave and resilient, and I love you as your friend. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we're welcoming Maya and Gili Roman. Maya is the founder and CEO of Politically Correct. It's a leading Israeli feminist nonprofit. She also recently submitted her PhD in philosophy of science and has been a vocal social activist for a decade, speaking on topics like women rights, promoting equality, freedom of speech, and diversity. Gili Roman is an expert in education. He was a principal of an international school for peace, focusing in the Middle East, hosting Israeli and Palestinian students among other internationals in Israel. He's working in the strategy unit of Israeli Ministry of Education and advises education leadership programs. And the past 3 months advocating for his sister and now cousin in captivity. Gili, would you like to start? Or Maya? Okay.
I'm going to start. Thank you. Thank you, Maya and Dvir. And, you know, Maya for speaking of the hostages and you know, we were just in a delegation with Emily's mom and Doron's mom. And, yeah, and we were with Keith's brother and Keith's son when we met with Senator Graham in Israel. And I feel like we know, and Dvir knows Carmel, who we're going to talk about. So it's like a new community that I never knew, never wanted to be part of, but now we have the chance, yeah. So I'm Maya. I'm here to tell you a little bit about what my family has been through these past 3 months. On October 7th, my cousin Gili and his siblings, Yarden, Liri and Roni, and their father, Johnny, all came back from South Africa. They were on a family trip. They went to for 3 weeks. Their mom had passed away a year before, and they are an extremely close family, and they all went. And Gili, being a good cousin, let me stay in his apartment because I was going through a hard time. And they came back on the 6th, and I went back to stay with my parents on the 7th. And I woke up at 6 a.m. because there was a missile alarm in Tel Aviv. My cousin Yarden and her husband had lived in Kibbutz Be'eri, which is very close to Gaza, for the past 4 years. But they had just decided to leave the kibbutz on September 1st. They decided, Yarden figured it was no way to raise their little girl, Geffen, 3 years old, with the constant missile alarms. And they decided to leave the kibbutz. They were on this family trip and they came back, and so they decided to celebrate the holiday with Alon's family in Kibbutz Be'eri, where Alon's sister also came after she had just been on a trip to India, and Alon's brother Or recently came back from the States. They all gathered at the family home in Be'eri. And on the 7th, I woke up. I didn't know I was supposed to be worried because I thought, well, Yarden had left and they're in South Africa. And but after a while, we realized, no, she went back to Be'eri. She was in touch with Gili, who will tell about his experience in a moment, but at a certain point, she stopped responding at 10:30. I think I can only describe the experience of the 7th for someone who wasn't there as the experience of 9/11, probably here. So it was this unfolding understanding of a magnitude of an event that you could never have imagined. I work at a nonprofit and a news organization, and I started getting WhatsApp messages from friends who live in the South telling me, listen, they're saying that there are 5 people kidnapped and 50 people dead. I said, no way is that possible. Of course, by the end of the day, we knew that those numbers were nothing compared to what we were facing. And then as the day went on, we realized more and more the dimensions of the horrific event we were dealing with. For a long time, once we realized Yarden was probably kidnapped, we hoped that she was held in the kibbutz. There were rumors going around that people were held in the dining room together. So we thought maybe she's there. But that night we realized that she was not. And on October 8th, Johnny, Gili's father, called me and said, we have a family war room, just like Dvir's brother, and we need to start getting organized and understand what's happening. On the 8th, we got a call from Yarden's husband, Alon, who told us what had happened. So around 10:30, terrorists entered his family home and took his family members one by one. His father, Eshel, was able to hide in the bathroom and see his family members get taken away, his wife, and then his daughter, Carmel, and then Alon, Yarden, and their 3-year-old daughter, Geffen. We later learned that Kineret, Alon's mother, had been murdered outside the home, that Carmel apparently saw her mother as they were taking her to Gaza. Alon, Yarden, and Geffen were taken towards the Gaza border. And right before the border, they somehow decided to seize an opportunity and jump out of the moving car. Yarden was holding Geffen in her arms, and she jumped one way, and Alon jumped the other way, and they started running with the terrorists shooting at them. Yarden realized that she couldn't run fast enough, so she gave Geffen over to Alon and told him to run. And she stayed behind. She told me later that she realized that to be injured in this situation is the worst thing imaginable, and so she stopped running and pretended to be dead. As Alon ran away with Geffen, he hid with Geffen, a 3-year-old child, in a small ditch for 12 hours. Hearing the jeeps looking for them and keeping Geffen quiet. Amazingly, she was amazing. She hardly said anything, except for at a certain point she told him, "It's really a shame we didn't bring any water on the trip." She's really amazing. And then he started making his way back to the kibbutz. He fashioned himself something to put on his legs because he was barefoot and Yarden were barefoot. They were in their pajamas. He stopped, and when he found a towel to have Geffen sleep for a little bit on his way back, and then he reached the kibbutz and called us to tell us that they are okay, but he doesn't know what happened to Yarden. That day, Gili immediately drove to Be'eri. He will tell you what he went through there. And we started trying to figure out what had happened to Yarden. After a while, we realized that she was kidnapped. And we started going everywhere, all over the world. First to Germany, because we're also Holocaust survivors, and we have German citizenship because our grandparents escaped right before the Holocaust. So we're in Germany advocating, meeting with all kinds of officials. We came here to the state many times, trying to make sure we get everyone back. After 54 days, we got Yarden back. And it was really the happiest moment, I think, of all of our lives. I like to mention that Yarden's father says it's really weird how the happiest moment of your life can come from the worst time of your life. It's true. Yarden is so strong, and she told us just terrible things, but the one thing she cared most about was where is Carmel and when is Carmel coming back. And Carmel, like Emily, like Doron, was supposed to come back the following couple of days because the hostage humanitarian deal was for all the women and children. And we were sure that Carmel was coming back the following day. Johnny, Yarden's father, told Eshel, Carmel's father, "You're going to feel this in a couple of days." And then the following morning, Yarden woke up and we saw that the hostage deal had fallen through. And that was the first time, I think, that she really broke down since she came back. And since that day, it has been almost 54 more days. And it is unimaginable. I mean, we have Yarden back with us, but we see Carmel's family, her brothers, her father. We know what they're going through, even though we can't imagine to still be in that situation 107 days after. And we're really here, both Gili and I, as people who are also part of the liberal progressive community in Israel and still believe in those values, to speak to and advocate and explain that this issue of the hostages is a humanitarian issue and not a political issue. And every single person should be committed to making sure they come back to us now. We know they're running out of time. Every week we hear of a couple more hostages that are declared dead. And we really need you. We need all of you and all of your voices because, it's a lot of weight to carry for family members. My cousin came back, so it's not as heavy for me. But I see all the other families and what they have to go through. I see the people in the delegation with us, the mothers, that have to advocate for their daughters. And we need you all to lighten the load a little bit and help us make sure the world doesn't forget, because we can't. And Gili's going to add some more of what we've been through during these 100 days.
Thank you. I want to share with you my experience on October 8th. Because for me, October 7th was mostly a shocking day. I describe it a little bit. But it was just a day where we couldn't understand what is actually going on. And always telling ourselves stories about better scenarios than there were actually on ground. Only on October 8th, I actually understood what happened, because after a sleepless night, Alon called us and told us he's safe, and Geff and my niece is safe, but he doesn't know what happened to my sister and where she is. And at that point, we started to have this experience that is kept on going through our lives since then, which we always share conflictual feelings. Like, obviously, we were relieved that they're alive, but we were extremely worried, not knowing what happened to my sister. At that point, by the way, we also didn't know what happened to his mother, Kineret, that we found out 2 days later by a Hamas video that she was murdered outside of the house. And we saw her lying in her own pool of blood, shot in the head with 3 other civilians in that kibbutz. And this is how they found about it, her sons and her husband, and also myself through Instagram. And Carmel, his sister, who we understood is also a hostage. So when I hang out the phone, I looked at the door, and I said to myself, I have to go. I have to go to the battlefield because no one will look for my sister. Like, until they will realize what happened to her, and it's so chaotic, no one will search for her. So I got into the car, and within an hour I was already at the battlefield. And it's hard to explain, but if you ever saw a horror movie of a war zone, it looks exactly like this, but on a extreme scale. All the road to Be'eri was bombarded cars, shattered cars, bodies, blood, smoke. I just drove through all of that, got into the entrance of the kibbutz. Our troops were already there, but we were shot at every few hours, either by terrorists. It's also important to note that Be'eri, as a kibbutz, for example, was liberated only on Tuesday. So I've been there every day. Until Monday evening, they would still bring people outside of the kibbutz. So we were all outside because there were dozens of this. They started with hundreds, but there were dozens of terrorists inside. Where we were, outside of the gate, we stayed between the body bags area all the time. They brought body bags outside, and we are talking about over 90 civilians that were murdered there. Next to them, at the tree, there were dozens of live terrorists captured waiting to be taken, sitting next to us. Wounded soldiers getting out of the kibbutz all the time. And once in a while, a mother and a child getting out, an elderly woman, a dementic elderly person getting out every few hours. And I got there, I think it was 9 a.m., and I just went through a life-changing moment. And that was trying to find someone in this world that will help me save my sister. Going from officer to officer, I cannot explain how chaotic it was. Like, the units there were replacing all the time. Going from officer to officer and say, please, let's look for my sister. Let's go to the battlefield where all the terrorists are, next to the Gaza border, risk your life in order to find if my sister is there. And I think that from that point, Mika presented that a little bit. I dedicated the last decade to peace education. This is basically what I do. I have a very inclusive world point of view. I think that we should expand the scope of our communities and of our care, and to see who can we include and how can we coexist. At that moment, the whole world has been divided into the people who want to save my sister and the people who want to hurt my sister and the people who do not care. And that continued until today. And I will explain in a minute. But I found those people, I found these officers that were willing to go with me for the first time. We went in 300 meters after we went to the field. 2 terrorists started shooting at us, attacking us. They basically saved my life because I was unarmed in on the family car, and they dismantled this threat, and I had to look in their eyes and say, please, let's not go back. Let's go deeper into the battlefield and search for my sister. And they said yes. And that was going on and on every day for almost a week until they concluded by the trackers that she's not there. I just imagine how it felt like beyond the begging, beyond explaining every time to a new officer what has happened, why is it important, why it's important to risk their soldier's life to go find her, just sitting there and waiting to see if they're coming back with a body, with my sister just alive, with my sister injured, or coming back and telling me what I heard lastly, she's not there, she's kidnapped. So all of this emotion, all this spectrum of the most optimistic scenario and the most devastating scenario were in my head all the time. And after that, on Wednesday evening, they came back. They had a 5-hour search, and they said, she's not there, and she's not injured, and she's not hurt, but she's taken. And as Maya said, we launched an international campaign, and I think a lot of it, of what we have experienced, is this division. So for me, I mean, this division between people like you, like many people that we've met, who feel they are part of our community and share our concern for human life and want to save our family members, and so many people who do not care. And even worse, think that it is justified and that it's okay that my sister and Carmel are in captivity. And it's okay that we've been murdered and slaughtered and chased. And these people are a part of global communities that we attribute ourselves to. So for me, this whole experience from October 8th was devastating in various levels. Obviously, the first level is the worry for my sister. And gladly, this is over. And our life really changed. Look at the person that I've been before she was released, and I cannot recognize that person. Sometimes I see all the interviews of myself, and I look and I say, who is this suffering person Like, it's so extreme that I cannot even imagine what I have been through. I don't recognize myself. And now, of course, it's devastating still because of Carmel and all the other hostages that are not there. But there are other levels. And the next level is that we feel very betrayed. And we feel that while we were willing to stand, and we're standing with our communities, people we thought that we are allies. I don't know if it's mentioned, like, I'm also an LGBTQ activist in Israel and human rights activist. I felt that to a very large extent, I was left alone. And people were not willing to even stand up for my sister. I'm not saying get into the battlefield and look for her. Just standing up, just speaking. And the last...
I think this is an experience, shared experience that people also feel here in America, that we are together in this and not everybody understands. It's painful. So on a personal level, but also on a national, international level.
I think it's a really a global issue of who are we standing with and what are our values.
But it's also hard because you want to be a part of the world and to be together with everyone on these values, and suddenly, maybe we're not. It's a breaking point internally.
It is a breaking point. And I think that for the last part, like for me, as someone who aspire for peace, although I know that it's very far away, it's not, I knew it even before. It was excruciating to see that people do not understand that they are speaking in the name of peace, but they are supporting something who is hindering peace in the most destructive way. By any means that you even affiliate or understand or being silent about a jihadistic cause, about a terrorist cause that initiated and directed what happened on October 7th. And since then, there is no more fundamental hurt to the attempts for a long-standing peace and coexistence. There isn't. So it's also devastating for me because I say, okay, we had so much work before. Now we have even more work, to explain to the people we thought that have the same desire as us to live in peace, to find solution, to find compromise. And they're basically supporting something that we can never compromise on. So I'm still trying to figure out where do I stand in the world and how can we promote the things that we believe in. And I just want to say everything that we believe in, everything that we want to promote starts with the hostages. So without speaking for them, without bringing them back, without advocating for human lives, nothing can progress. Nothing can be fixed.
And this is a shared feeling to every Israeli and liberal, loving life people. Israel is on a hold.
Yeah, I want to add one more thing that we haven't mentioned so far. I just wanted to say a little bit about Carmel from what we know, and one thing that we were very surprised to see from the officials we met. So regarding Carmel, when the hostages were released was the first time we heard anything about her. And two of the young boys that were released told us that they were held with her in quite harsh physical conditions. But they also told us that she really helped them deal with captivity. She taught them yoga, and she taught them meditation, and she had them keep a journal. These were the people that wanted to help create such a world.
We have time for a few questions. So if anybody would like to ask a question, this is a good time. If you can stand up, say your name. And
So, the twins are with one of my sisters. They're surrounded with love, all hands on deck. They're happy, they're healthy. They are back in the daycare with the rest of their nephews. We're controlling the daycare now. all 5 of them in the same daycare. Except for Ziv, yeah, he's. But yeah, they're fine. Luckily, they were young enough not to remember. I can't say that they didn't understand, but hopefully they won't remember. And like with everyone else, it's a long process. But they're okay.
Another question? Yes, in the back.
So I think that a lot of the fight is happening here. Okay, it's not a fight on ground, but the U.S. support is vital for what is going on in Israel with regard to the war, but mostly with regard to the hostages. So far, we have seen an administration that is very unapologetically supportive, but that can change. And I think that it is crucial for you to use your social connections, power in order to create this ongoing support and advocating for that, again, in an unapologetical way, first and foremost for the hostages. And I think that a big challenge, I said since we came here, that something here in this culture is not very familiar. We are not very familiar with that. We don't have cancel culture in Israel. Like we have, but it's very minor. And what we find out here, that people are actually supporting us, but they're afraid. So I think that this is also a challenge for you to see how you can make them speak and be safe and have a conversation. We also came here to create 2 days from now. I think I'm going to Penn University, and after we're going to Harvard University and try to speak with students. I don't know how it will look like. Basic education is to have an open conversation and have the ability to vocalize nuanced opinions. So I think that this is also part of your work, and in a more maybe tangible way, I think that many families are, as you heard, having still war rooms and operations, and like what we did, founded NGOs in order to move forward. So if this is also interesting to any of you, you can find those families. You can see if they need like a practical support or something. But I think that you have a very big task here, which is also, as I think that you said, it's also about you. It's not only about us.
Like the community Israel from the kibbutzim, you mean?
No, in general. Like that vibe, the energy, what is happening in Israel, how do people feel?
And if I can put an extra point on that, like, especially from as someone who is an activist, or what the progressive voice maybe looks like back in Israel, you make space for people like us too, by hearing your, right, the different looks of it all. So, but how does it feel being back, when you take this message back home? How does it go? Yeah. Okay. I mean, is that a fair add-on?
I will answer. Okay. Okay, so
Yeah.
I would say firstly that in numerous ways it's easier to be in Israel than here. In Israel you feel a lot of unity, and you don't feel isolated from the events. So it's the center issue in Israel. They don't talk about the primaries in Iowa, okay? I think that for us it's a very different experience. And for many weeks I think that there was a very strong sense of unity. We are not there at the moment, but it's not exactly like that anymore.
But you've been there last week.
Yeah, but it's really changed in the last few days. And we see also our prime minister. I'm not going to expand on that, but I think that again, he's not doing a very good job in trying to unify us. So that become a little bit more conflictual. I think that although there are always attempts from different certain sides to make a division, for example, regarding the hostages in Israel, it does not succeed. It's a very consensual issue. And I think that if you went to the DC rally, or if you had rallies here, so in Israel it's every week. Like we feel it every week about the hostages. So I think it gives also strength to people. So I think this experience is different from here. Regarding your questions, a little bit more difficult. I would say as liberals or peace-seeking people, we need a little bit to be more alert of what we are saying and how we conduct our messages. For me specifically,
Wouldn't you say most of Israelis moved a little bit to the right because of everything that happened October 7th?
Well,
even
I don't know
the most
if
leftiest.
I don't know if it will be. I don't know if the definitions will be exactly right and left, because many people, for example, acknowledge the fact that a right-wing government, like many right-wing governments, in the basically fed Hamas through the last 2 decades. I think that it's a very deep understanding of many people, and that was considered to be a right-wing policy, which we really opposed. So I think that I would say about myself, I'm not so vocal about it at home, also here, because I think I have a lot of reflection to do. Like I think that I need to be very careful of what I'm saying, because I need to actually understand if what I'm saying is viable, how reasonable of the things that I'm saying. I need to really evaluate the situation. I think that so for many people this is the case in our camp. But people who have like stronger views, I think it's much harder to express them at the moment.
I want to add like 2 words because I know we have to finish, but I think 2 things regarding what Gili said. One, it is much easier back home, also because the progressive left aren't as confused as I think people are here. I work with Israeli Palestinians and friends who support a free Palestine. They were the first ones to write to me on October 7th saying, this is not my free Palestine. I don't want to advance this cause of liberation through rape, murder. You know, we're anti-militaristic. We're also anti-Hamas because it's militaristic. So, and I think here, somehow, I hear a lot more how Hamas is the actual representation of the Palestinian cause, and this is something that doesn't exist that much in Israel. And this is a line of thought that is extremely harmful to any ability to continue for a peace process. Our ability to argue for peace right now is based on our ability to differentiate between the Palestinians and Hamas and say there are Palestinians who aren't Hamas. There are Palestinians who don't just want to kill us, and we can someday do something. And when people here create this equation of this was a whatever, anti-colonialist, and I speak liberal like the best of them, it's ridiculous. It's just ridiculous, and it's harmful to us. And additionally, as Gili said, I do think that as someone who's on the progressive left in Israel, for a long time we thought that Hamas is very weak compared to Israel. It's not as big a threat, and we as the stronger entity can be more lax regarding how we treat Hamas and know that we have to protect human lives, etc. And what happened on October 7th was an existential threat on a level that I never thought could happen. And I think that is the kind of rethinking that a lot of us are doing, because a lot of my positions were based on a belief that they're not going to do anything critical to us.
Now, there's a lot of different perspectives on the left here. And as clearly there's a group that is just pathetically unwilling or unable to understand the danger and the ferocity and the inhumanity and the brutality of the Hamas folks. There's no question. I do think, and I think it'd be interesting once you go to some the universities, a lot of young people are critical of Israel, deeply critical right now, because what they're seeing on their televisions with everything that's happened since October 7th, in the sense that that Israel has not been careful enough to prevent civilian casualties. And there was a very powerful piece on NPR the other day that talked about very different conversations within the media. There's actually very little coverage of a lot of the attacks on Gaza within the Israeli military. And then, of course, a lot of these young people, with their algorithms, are getting pumped every single day with nothing but the attacks on Gaza. And so I'd love to get your perspective on that question. I mean, let's set aside the people who are defending Hamas. I mean, it's either the best case scenario, deeply confused, worst case scenario, barbaric and hateful and anti-Semitic and all the rest. But how do you
What do you answer to that?
Yeah. I think personally that, but I also think a lot of people in Israel will agree that we don't want to see innocent people die, and we would like the war to end. I personally would like the war to end. But when people talk about ending the war without including the hostages, I cannot accept that. So I think that what is very bothersome to me is that there are a lot of calls for ceasefire now, bringing aid into Gaza now, and I understand them, but the war does serve a leverage point in bringing back the hostages. It is the only thing that's affecting Sinwar. And our doomsday scenario is that the war dwindles down and things start to calm down and the hostages aren't here. Because in that case, they're going to be there for years. So, and I'm in a, for us, I think as people progressive, it's really hard because I see a terrible equation where I don't want to see any more lives lost, but at the same time, I know that it does serve the purpose of bringing back the hostages. And at the same time, at the beginning, we were in this terrible equation, knowing that my cousin is there, now knowing that Carmel is there. Of course, we know that this also endangers the hostages, the ongoing war. We can't ignore that. But if we want them back, and this is something that everyone in the State Department has told us quite clearly since the beginning, at least in the first stages, the war was the only way to create some sort of pressure on Sinwar to bring back the hostages. It was crucial in the first humanitarian deal. It would not have happened without the military operations. Right now, we're possibly in a different place, but still thinking of ending the war without getting the hostages back is unacceptable. That's kind of what I would have to say.
I will try to directly approach your concern and explain how I see it, because obviously we are also concerned. But we also see it's true that in Israel they are not being broadcast, but we do see the images and we know the situation. I think that the way that I look at it, that when we try to examine or criticize what we do, we need to look at what we should do and what we can do. So if we look at what we should do, we must do two things. First of all, we have to do our utmost best to protect our people. I think that it has to be agreed upon, because if we will not be committed to do our utmost best to protect our country, to protect our people, there is no reason to have a state. And I think that many people do not share this view. And basically, it's not that they only think that it's not only undermining the idea of an Jewish state, it's just undermining the idea of a state. Because the state's supposed to do its utmost best to protect its citizens. So we have to do it. We must do it. At the same time, there's another thing that we should do. We need to minimize any harm to uninvolved people. We need to do both of them. Mostly at wars, it's difficult, but it's not as difficult as this conflict. Because what Hamas is basically doing, he knows we should do both, and just making it impossible to distinguish between these two imperatives. So the gap between them, that it's usually a little bit broader, does not exist. There is no gap.
When you say
between,
Hamas is doing it a hard time, what do you mean?
it means that there is no way to military attack Hamas without hurting civilians. There isn't.
Because he's hiding.
Yeah, because they are just completely assembled into civil society. They're completely assembled. Like there is no distinction. It's not that every Palestinian is Hamas, but they are just in their houses, under their houses, in their hospitals, in their schools. Like it's become the gap between those two musts that we should do has no. There is no gap between them. So then we go into what we can do. I think for me, the only question is, do we use the means that we have? And I think that looking at it, I'm not there, okay? I'm not an expert and I am not there. But looking at the thing that we have done, I think we are using a lot of means in order to do that. Telling people, like we gave weeks for people to evacuate. And we are many times telling people where we're gonna hit, when we're gonna hit, allowing them to run it. Is it enough? Honestly, I don't know. I don't know because I'm not into the details. But I feel, and since I definitely know that we are not doing everything that we can to protect ourselves, and we are using the means that I think that we have in order to minimize this hurt.
I want to say that a lot of the attention goes to Israel and what Israel needs to do, but there's other side here that should answer the questions and should give explanations to what they did. If they return all of the hostages right now, we would be able to relax and feel safe and not have a military action going on. So let's start with that. It's a simple humanitarian ask, and then we can go to the politics. I want to say thank you so much to everybody that was here and showed up. Keep showing up, ask questions. I'm sure all Israelis would love to have this conversation, even the tough ones, and if they don't, they will say. I know it's not easy times in America as well, so I want to embrace you too. Thank you so much.